This dry and desert land, I tell myself keep walking on. Here's something up ahead, water falling like a song. An everlasting stream, your river carries me on. Let it flow, let it flow. Love for my soul, a well that never will run dry. I've rambled on my own, never believing I would find an everlasting stream, your river carries me on. Let it flow, let it flow. Oh, in the heavens, come living water on my fountains. They are in the air. You're strong like the river. You love peace, you are peace. When my fear is crippling, you are true, you are true. Even in my wandering, you are joy, you are joy. You're the reason that I sing. You are life, you are life. In you death has lost its sting. And oh, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. You are more than my words will ever say. You are Lord, all creation will proclaim. You are here, in your presence I'm made whole. You are God, above all else I'm letting go. And oh, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. Oh, so I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus,
I looked and I found that there's no one like you in all the earth. And you take my hand and you guide me on, and you show me the way to life. And you lift my hand and you give me there's no one like you in all the earth. You guys can have a seat. We're going to move into this time of communion. And what this is our way of saying that God paid the ultimate sacrifice for us. That he sent his son to die a painful death for us on the cross so that we wouldn't have to. What's going to happen are some trays are going to come up and down the aisle with a little wafer and a cup of juice. Take one of each of those, take them on your own time. We're not going to come back up and do it all together. But I want this to be a moment for you to remember and hear from God. Hear him saying, I love you. I want you. I commit myself to you. I give my covenant to you. This is my new covenant in my blood shed for you. And I want us to ask the question of, do I love you? Do I love you, God? Am I willing to accept this? And if all of this just sounds crazy or confusing or uncomfortable, that's okay. Just keep the tray passing. Don't feel pressure. There's going to be a time for you to ask questions at the end. But just keep the tray moving. There's no shame in that. You're safe here. What you're also going to hear is some crashing of the cups around the room. And that's our way of saying it is finished. The old order of ways have passed. He already knew what we were going to do before we did it and still said it was finished. I want this to be a moment where you think and remember that no one's brokenness is too broken for God. There's no one who is too broken to be chosen by God. Let's pray and enjoy this meal together. Jesus, thank you for the sacrifice that you paid for us. Thank you for dying the ultimate death for us. Knowing that we were sinners and knowing that we would fail you time and time again, thank you for still paying that price for us. Jesus, I pray that there will be no shame in this place. I pray that there will be joy in knowing that you love us and that you want us. We love you, and it's in your holy and precious name. Amen.
heard a challenge similar to what Greg put out 2 weeks ago, about 20 years ago. While attending Sunnyside Christian Church, we would give roughly $20 per paycheck in the offering. We got paid every other week, and how we determined how much to give, well, when Sunday morning came, we'd look in the checkbook. And we'd see how much money was left and what expenses we still had to pay. Then one day, Stan Sack, pastor at Sunnyside, talked about tithing and made a challenge. He challenged anyone to tithe 10%. And he guaranteed that they would be no worse off in 6 months than they were today. And if we were, he guaranteed to pay the money back. So Kathy and I thought, why not give it a try? So we pledged to try it for 6 months. Keep in mind, we had 3 teenagers at home. Expenses were never ending.
For the next 6 months, we gave our 10% as we had pledged to do. And I remember thinking, gosh, 10% is a lot of money. The first thing we noticed was that we still had grocery money at the end of the pay period, and we were giving more and still had money in the checkbook. So we thought, wow, maybe this is going to work.
Then we thought, 10% works. What would 12% look like? We made the decision to move to 12%. When we put 12% in the budget spreadsheet, the number at the bottom turned red. We thought, well, let's do it anyway and let God take care of the negative part. 2 months later, I got a promotion at work.
After 1 year at 12%, not only did we still have grocery money, we also had saved a little. This was the first time in our married life we actually had some savings to fall back on. We did 12% for another year, and then we decided it was time to move to 13. Now, John's faith was not as strong as it should have been. We knew expenses were not going to stop.
Keep in mind, this is all God, and we continued to be blessed. We were given 13, things were going great, 3 teenagers. We decided, why not go to 15%?
We actually had accumulated an emergency savings, which came in handy, and our next step was 17%, and then we moved to 18. Keep in mind, though, we did this very slowly. This was not, it wasn't real quick.
And then in June 2007, I transferred to a position with General Dynamics in our Virginia office. The cost of living in Northern Virginia, much higher. We struggled and didn't know how we were going to make it work. So we decided, let's raise our offering to 20%. And once again, God had everything under control.
Everything we have belongs to God, and we know we can never outgive Him. So I'm so thankful that Stan had challenged us 20 years ago and got us on this road to tithing.
Yeah, we can give it up for John and Kathy. That's great. Hey, good to see you. I'm so excited. Every time that I have a week off and I'm not up here, I'm chomping at the bit to get back. So I'm pumped about being with you today. Hey, how was John Eldridge last week? Eldridge was awesome. As usual, just give it up for John. It was great to have my friend John with us last week. Before we do or say anything else, I got to show you something. So we've been in this series. We're wrapping up a series today that we've called Back in Black. And we're talking about getting in, staying in, or getting back in the black financially, which means there's more money coming in than there is going out, which is a place that all of us want to be. And in the first week, I talked about how difficult that is for us and the challenge of spending and how hard it is not to spend money on things that we don't really need and all that. And I talked about how we don't even have to leave our houses anymore to do that. We can do that from the comfort of our own home. And then I talked about how, there's this thing that's kind of stuck in the back of my mind, this infomercial on the atomic lantern that I can't get this thing out of my mind. Everything in me saying, I got to have it, I got to have it, I got to have it, I got to have it. So 2 weeks ago, I preached, the weekend, and then Sunday after second service, I walked back into my office. I was getting ready to pick up my keys and leave, and this was sitting on my desk. I got to show you this, right? Here it is. The atomic lantern. You got to see how the lights, please. Here we go. All right, watch this. You ready? It's going to blow your freaking mind. Wow, right? Wow, and the cool part is, look, you can hang it like this, or it's got a hook on the bottom, or you can hang it like this, or check this out. There are 4 magnets right here. Boom, you can stick it under the hood of the car, whatever you want. Now, I haven't needed it yet, but I've played with it a whole lot. You just need to know. It sits on my desk at home, and I've played with this thing a whole lot. Now, you're sitting here and you're going, honey, I think I got to have that, right? And, we're broke. We don't have any money. We're in debt. You know what? I think this is the one exception to this whole series. So Go for it. God will forgive you. I'm just saying, it is an atomic lantern, for goodness sake, right? So, hey, there wasn't a note in there. There wasn't anybody who, I don't know who gave that to me. So if you're sitting here today and you're the person or people that gave that to me, thank you so much for that. I got to tell you, you probably shouldn't have, but it did really make my day, right? That's how shallow I can be. I have an atomic lantern, all right? Hey, actually, I want to start today by thanking more people than just that before we jump in and wrap this thing up today. Here's the deal. You don't see these numbers, and I think you need to know this, especially if you love or care about this place. So the number of people on mission with us financially since we started this series 3 weeks ago has increased. That's really, really good news. So yeah, you can clap for that. That's right. So thank you, right? I want to clue you into where we are. So in the month of January, we averaged 157 giving units. So that's what are giving units? Giving units are people or couples or families, whatever they are, that give to us or give to this mission or vision on any particular week. And so we averaged 157 for January. I just want to be honest with you, that's a terrible number. That's a bad number for a church our size. That's a bad number historically for us. So that was our average for January. So in the last 3 weeks since we started this series, the average has jumped to 205 over the last 3 weeks, which is a 31% increase. All right, so that's the good news. That's the good news. The more challenging news for us is this. In a church our size, in a strong, healthy church our size, that number should be about 300 per week. So we still have some ways to go. We still have some work to do here, but I just want you to know, I want to say thank you from me to you. Thank you from our whole team. Thank you from our elders. Thank you from everybody for jumping in. For all of you who stepped up and into that. Really, really excited about that. But I am most excited about what that is going to do for you if you're one of those people or one of those families. That's what I'm most excited about, what that's going to do for you, and the stories that are going to come out of this in the weeks and the months to come if we just stay the course and stay with this. See, this series really is just like every other series that we do in this place. And I know it doesn't feel like that, but I promise you it is. A money series, a finance series always feels, you feel guilt, you feel shame, you feel pressure, you feel like you're being forced to do something. I get all that, but this series is really no different than every other series, and here's what I mean. This series is all about what we want for you. What we want for you. That story that we just watched on video there, John and Kathy Allender's story, it is not a fairy tale. It is not odd. It is not unusual. It is not an outlier. It's not. I could point you to hundreds and hundreds of other people that I know who have a very similar story. Everything that John and Kathy are experiencing in their life and in their story is available to me, and it's available to you as you sit here today. And so my hope for all of us is this. And we're going to wrap up this series today, and we're going to walk out those doors more convinced than we've ever been that this stuff might be possible for us too. So that's my hope for you. So last things before we jump back in and finish this thing up is this. Hey, if you're here for the first time today, thanks for being with us. It means a lot to us that you're here. There's 3 things we always want you to know if you're brand new. All of your stories safe and welcome with us every single week, regardless of how it reads. You belong with us regardless of what you believe. And you're in a room today full of people who are exactly like you. We're just a group, a tribe, a community, whatever you want to call us, of people. We come in here every single week, sometimes drag ourselves in here. We're chasing after a better way to live. We happen to believe in this place that Jesus offers that, but you don't even have to believe that to belong here with us. So glad you're here. To all of our online friends checking us out, old and new, good to have you with us. And if you're brand new, good to have you with us too. Hope you want to come back and do this again with us real soon. So here's the rub. Here's the rub for us today as we jump back into this and we land the plane. One of the greatest things, standing between you and me and this better life that we all came in here looking for. Man, I hope there's something better available for me, and there is. One of the greatest things standing between us and that is the very thing that we're talking about in this series, how we handle and manage our money. Now, I don't expect you to believe that. I don't expect you to believe it. It's okay if you don't believe that. Believing what's written in this book, the Bible, and believing what we say from the stage in this place is not a condition on any given week, is never a condition for you belonging here with us. So I don't expect you to believe it. It's okay if you don't believe it. All I'm asking you to do is this. Will you step into this with me? Let's just talk about it, talk through it. Hear me out. Would you just do that before you decide? before you decide to write it off and decide that it's not true or that it's not true for you. That's all I'm asking you to do. Okay, so fair enough. Here we go. Let's wrap this thing up. We're going to the New Testament, and then we're going to flip to the Old Testament for a few minutes as we wrap this thing up today. Mark chapter 12 is where we're going to start. So if you have a Bible and you want to turn there, Mark 12 is where we're going. There's Bibles on the back tables if you want to grab one. If not, grab it on your way out. Take it home with you. We always have them there as a gift to you. You can hit our app or YouVersion if you like the electronic thing. You want to do it on your phone, or just read with me on these screens. So Jesus is teaching a large crowd in Mark chapter 12, and we're going to pick it up in verse 38. As he taught, Jesus said, "Watch out for the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and have the most important seats in the synagogues or in the church and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely." And Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Okay, let's stop right there and let's unpack this just a little bit. So Jesus, he's teaching this large crowd, and he tells them, he says, listen, see those guys over there, those teachers of the law? Yeah, watch out for them. The guys with the fancy robes on, I know. They were in fancy robes. They sit in the best seats in the church and all that. Watch out for those guys. At the end of the day, those guys are going to be punished most severely. And then it's like, he stops teaching and he goes over with his disciples and he sits down across from one of the 13 offering boxes in the temple court area in that day. And he just does what a lot of us like to do. He people watches. He just sits back with his disciples and they watch people. And as they're watching people, rich people, it says, come by and they drop large amounts of money into the offering box. And then here comes this poor widow. And she drops in a few coins worth only a few cents. Now, to this point in the story, all we really know is the numerical value of what they've given, right? So the rich people gave large amounts, not really a dollar amount, but it's numerical value, a large amount of money. And this poor widow, she gave a few cents. And for us, that's okay because that's what we tend to focus on, right? How much? And that's what we tend to pay the most attention to. That's what we consider to be most important. But here's the thing. God is looking at something different here. God is looking at something much deeper here, and that's what I want us to chase after and chase down in the time that we have left together. So let's start today with just a general observation, a very simple observation about who? About me and about you, okay, about people. Here we go. In the world that we live in today, people both inside and outside the church, there's really no difference. If we give financially at all, here's what tends to be true. We tend to give conditionally or from what's left over. We tend to give financially, conditionally, or from what's left over. Now, what I mean by conditional giving, I mean there's a condition placed on it. We will not give until certain conditions are met. And so we ask questions like, will this benefit me? And if the answer is no, if not, I can't and I won't give. Will this, if I give this, will I be able to pay my bills? If not, I can't and I won't give. If I give this, will I be able to get out of debt? If not, I can't and I won't give. If I give this, will there be enough left for me to be comfortable, for me to live on? If not, I can't and I won't give. Can I trust who I'm giving this to? Can I trust them to do what I think they should do with it or to do with it what I want them to do with it? If not, I can't and I won't give. Now, that last one that I just said right there, it just seems to be emerging from the story that we're reading today, doesn't it? I mean, did you see it? Because Jesus just said what? He said, don't trust those guys. Those teachers of the law guys, I know they're church people, but you really can't trust them at all. And so Jesus just said that. And so here's a question. Can this poor widow trust as she gives? Can she trust them as she gives? Or based on what we know, knowing what we know already from what Jesus has just said, is she getting ready to get ripped off here? That's a great question. Here's the answer. It doesn't matter. See, that's not the question. She's not giving to them. She's not giving to the church. She's giving to God. Really, this is really, it reminds me of what Paul said. Paul, it was talking to the church at Ephesus in Acts chapter 20, verse 35. He says, remember what Jesus said. We are more blessed when we give than when we receive. You see, so the question is, why doesn't Jesus stop this poor widow? If she knows those guys aren't trustworthy and they're the guys that are sitting in the church and running the church, why doesn't he stop her here? Because he knows that the primary beneficiary here is the giver, not the receiver here. His focus is not on the heart of the receiver. His focus is on the heart, totally and completely on the heart of the giver. Why? Because that is the very person in the story that is at most risk on missing out the most. of missing out the most. See, unfortunately for us, when we do give, it tends to be what? Conditional and from what's left over. When you think about John and Kathy's story, isn't that where they started? I mean, 1997, John said, here's what we did. It's time to go to church. What's left in the checkbook? Boom, and we'll take a piece of that and we'll give it to the church. I'm not being critical of them. That's what I've done for most of my life too. So I grew up a church kid, right? We were the family that went every time the doors were open. Drove me crazy as a kid. I mean, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and I'd be out with my buddies playing ball or something on the street, be like, Greg, time to get dressed for church, and it'd drive me crazy, and they keep playing, and I had to come in and clean up and go to church. So I've been in this church thing my whole life, with a few exceptions. That's another story. But I've done this church thing, and I've had faith and walking with God and Jesus and all that modeled for me. My parents modeled a lot of stuff for me. Here's what it looks like, right? You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't cuss. You don't chew. You don't date girls that do. Even though Stacy does chew, I'm teasing. She doesn't. She doesn't. But tell her that. Hey, I heard you chew. That'd be fun. All right, so she'll be here after first service. So, yeah, you don't do that. You read your Bible. You go to Sunday school. I had all this stuff modeled for me as a kid. Here's what it looks like to be a Christian, right? Here's what I have faith. This stuff we're talking about, this giving stuff, not so much. I remember it like it was yesterday. So we'd always sing a song, and in the church I grew up in, they didn't have instruments because that was not considered to be right, and which drove me crazy too because I love rock and roll and all that. And so, but we didn't. So we're just singing, oh, and here comes the golden tray, and I remember like it was yesterday. My mom reaches in her purse every single week, week after week, $10 bill. Boom, here it comes. Then I got old enough to put it in myself. I probably dropped it a few times, but, they let me put it in there. But it was the same thing. And year after year after year, the amount never, ever changed. It never changed. And so here's the thing. My parents taught me to love Jesus, and I'm so grateful for that because I wouldn't be up here today if my parents hadn't introduced me to Jesus and life with Jesus. But this stuff that we're talking about in this series, this giving thing, this financial stuff, this was never really modeled for me. What was modeled for me was this. What can we afford? We give from what's left. And so it's no surprise that when I became an adult and I entered into adulthood myself, that if I gave anything at all, which was rare, so I was worth, right? I mean, if I gave anything at all, I did the exact same thing. I give what I thought I could afford, or I gave from what was left over. See, this is how we roll. This is how we typically roll. I heard a story about two guys that were in a shipwreck, and they were the only two survivors. They somehow made it to this remote island. And one of the guys is just totally freaked out. He's like, oh my gosh, nobody knows we're here. We don't have a radio. We don't have anything. We're in the middle of nowhere, and we're going to die. We're just going to die, and I'm going to eat you, or you're going to eat me, and it's just not good. And the other guy sitting right next to him, he's just sitting calmly in the sand on the beach, and he's just whistling. And so finally this guy's going off again. He's like, I can't believe you're so calm. We're going to die. I'm going to eat you. You're going to eat me. And the guy's looking at him, dude, just relax. He said, I make $100,000 a month. And I tithe. I give 10% to my church. My pastor will find us. Yeah, that's not true. Well, maybe. Don't judge me. Something feels true about that, doesn't it? See, and I told you, I don't know what anybody in this place other than my family gives. I don't. That's not going to change. So here's the truth. I'm not going to know what, if anything, you do with anything we've talked about in this series. I'm not going to see you any differently if I see you in the lobby after today, after this series is over. Next week, I'm not going to see you any differently than I did 4 weeks ago before this series started. That's just true. So I'm not going to know. I don't know, and it doesn't matter, but I do know this. That guy on that island who gives like that, he's in a very, very small minority. I talked to you a few weeks ago about how sad reality is. Us church people, we give between 2 and 2.5%, just like our unchurched friends do. I was reading another stat this week. Only 2.5% of people who claim to follow Jesus, church people, around the world, only 2.5% of those people are committed, regular percentage givers. Which means what? Means the vast majority of us, even sitting in the room today, we give conditionally. And we give from what's left over. And Jesus is trying to point us to something different here. So let's go back to the story for a minute. As we're reading the story, it seems like the rich people are the ones that gave the most, right? Did they? See, Jesus is getting ready to use this moment as an object lesson to help all of us out here. So let's keep going in the story, verse 43. So calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." All right, let's get back into the moment. So Jesus and the disciples are kicked back, and they're just people watching, and they see all these rich people come by, and all of a sudden, Jesus doesn't respond or say a word about any of them, but then this poor widow does her thing, chink, chink, 2 coins, and all of a sudden, boom, he's like, guys, come here. He calls his disciples to him. Did you see that? See what, Jesus? I mean, they're probably asleep or arguing or whatever the things they normally do, and so, see what? See her. Did you see her? Who? Her, that poor widow right there. Now, time out. Before we finish with the story. So we church people, we get all worked up about, teach me Greek, teach me Hebrew, the literal languages, right? And so it's like, okay, so here's an example. Do you know what poor here in the Greek, in the literal language, do you know what it really means? Poor. That's usually true, okay? Teach me Greek. It usually means what it says. That's just a side note. I digressed. Okay, let's go back to the story. So do you see her? Who? That poor widow right there. Yes. What about her, Jesus? She gave more than anyone else. And they're like, okay, time out, Jesus. Okay, so we weren't paying all that much attention, but I got to tell you, you see that guy right there? Yeah. Well, that dude, he dropped in a wad of money that thick. There was a $100 bill on top. That guy over there gave twice as much as him. It was twice as thick, Jesus. And Jesus is like, you boys just don't get it. You don't understand. Because what she gave, it wasn't dependent on how much she had. What she gave wasn't dependent on how much she could afford. What she gave wasn't dependent on what, if anything, she was going to be able to eat this afternoon. What she gave wasn't dependent on how much is she going to have left to live on. No. You know what? She didn't give from what was left over. She gave first off the top, and she gave everything, all she had to live on. See, here's the deal. The disciples, like us, they look at the amount. How much did she give? Jesus is looking at something different. He's looking at something deeper here. Ultimately, he's trying to help you and me see this. It is not a money issue. It is a priority issue. It is not a money issue. It's a priority issue. See, if you really want to know what is one of the major indicators of what's the number one priority in my life is how we handle and manage our money. If we let someone look behind the scenes into our checking accounts or our bank accounts and all of our finances, what would they conclude? Who or what would they conclude is the number one priority in our lives? And based on the statistics that I'm reading today, of 2.5% of us. So this, what that means? What does that mean? That means for 97.5% of us, even sitting in this room today, the answer would not be God. That God would be somewhere down the financial priority list if he made the list at all. Now listen to me. This is not a moment for me to judge you or condemn you, because me too, been there, all of that. That's not what this is about. This is not the moment where we shine a spotlight on you and go, shame, 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 shame on you. I'm not going to get out the atomic lantern and hang it over your head and go, shame, 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 shame on you. That's not what this is about. This is a moment, though, for all of us to pause for just a second and to privately ask ourselves a very important and necessary question. If God is not a financial priority in my life, what's it going to take for me to begin to move him in that direction? I mean, how can I begin to change that in my life, right? See, my guess is this, as I ask that question, and you think about, okay, what can I begin to change in my life? My guess is that John and Kathy's story that we just saw scares the sugar out of a lot of us, doesn't it? Yeah, me too. I'm not there. Yeah, that scares me too. 2008, summer of 2008, I came here to Discovery. Discovery was a church at the time that gave zero. As a church, we gave zero to missions. You know why? Because we were in the conditional leftover camp. What was the condition? Can we pay our bills? Answer, no. How much is left over? Nothing. Easy. We don't do it. And we did that for like a year and a half. Why did we do that? Because it was a money issue. It wasn't a priority issue to us. And then finally, we just looked at ourselves and said, hey, we can't continue to do this. If I'm going to stand up here and try to teach you the truth or what Jesus has to say about this stuff and God has to say about this stuff, we got to model this. If not, we're just going to be what people outside the church think we are. We're just going to be hypocritical as a church. And so we said, boom, we got to change this. It's not a money issue. It's a priority issue. And so but here's our problem. We can't go from 0 to 10%. We can't flip a switch and do that. And so you know what we did? First weekend of 2011, January 2011, we said 2.5%. We took 2.5%, we set it aside, and boom, sent it out the door to help other people. Now, guess what? When we did that, the remaining 97.5% would not pay all the bills. There wasn't enough left. Next week, we did the same thing. Next week, we did the same thing. We got to the end of the first quarter. Guess what? All the bills had been paid. So we said, okay, it's time to go to 5%. First week, we did that. Whew, that's a bigger number. It didn't leave us enough money to pay the bills. We kept doing it. Get to the end of the second quarter, all the bills have been paid. Boom, we go to 7.5%. The fourth quarter, we went to 10%. We rode this thing out. By the end of the year, we were giving 10% away, and every bill in that year, 2011, had been paid. And now we're at 12%, and we plan on continuing to grow that number. Why? Because it's not a money issue. It has to be a priority issue for us. 2 weeks ago, I challenged us. I said, hey, here's the deal. Pick a number, pick a percentage, give it for 6 months, set it, give it for 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, if God hasn't shown up in your life in any way, tell us, and we will give back to you every dollar of record that you've given to us. That afternoon, after I issued that challenge, I got an email from a guy named John in Louisville, Kentucky. And even though that's my hometown and that's where I spent 30-some years of my life and that's where I grew up, I've never met John, but he watches us week after week after week. And he sent me this email. I want to read it. I want to read it to you. He says, thanks so much for your courage and message with the recent DCC series, Back in Black. I've been running from this issue with money for a while now. And then he says this, I'm done running. So I just committed to God and to DCC to start a recurring donation of 2.5% of my monthly income. My goal is to increase to 5% after 3 months of giving, then 7.5% after 3 months, and finally to 10 cents by the end of the year, end of the first year. John usually watches first service on Sunday morning, so hey, John, thanks for sharing your story with us. But here's the deal. John's never walked in this building, ever. He's never felt and experienced what we get to feel and experience every single week. Rescue, safety, the hope, the heart of Jesus, and the presence of God in this place. He's never felt it. He watches on a screen every single week, but that doesn't matter that he's not here because he believes in and he's received the benefit of this mission and vision, even though he's an 18-hour drive away. And see, and here's the thing you need to know about John. John, like most of us, he can't flip a switch and go from 0 to 10%, but it doesn't matter. You know why? Because it's not about amount. It's about priority. And the first question is not how much. 2 weeks ago, I kind of tricked you, right? I said, pick an amount, right? A dollar amount or a percentage amount. But the first question is really not how much. The first question for you and for me is simply this. Is God going to be my first priority in this area of my life or not? That is so hard. But here's the deal. God tries his best to help us with this. He doesn't just leave us hanging in that. He comes alongside and he tries to help us with this. All right, so let's flip back to the Old Testament now, and let's wrap this thing up with Malachi chapter 3, starting with verse 8. Listen to what God says. He says, will a mere mortal rob God? Yet you rob me. You're robbing me. You're robbing me. But you ask, how are we robbing you, God? In tithes and offerings. You're under a curse, the whole nation, because you are robbing me. Bring the whole tithe, all of it, that percentage, into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be enough room for you to store it. Okay, let's just be honest and go ahead and admit this, okay? What God is pointing us to right here in Malachi doesn't make sense. It will never make financial sense. It will never make mathematical sense. If you're trying to make the numbers work, you're going to be trying that for the rest of your life. If you talk to a financial planner or advisor who is not a Christian, who's not a follower of Jesus, they are never going to tell you that the best way for you to get out of the red and into the black in your financial life is to take 10% of every dollar that comes into your house and give it away first. They're not going to tell you that. They're going to talk to you about reallocating your assets and getting your money to work better for you if you have any. They're going to talk about cutting back expenses. They're going to talk about additional sources of income or maybe taking on a second job. They're going to talk about coming up with a plan for you to attack your debt. And when it comes to giving to a charity or giving to a church, right, that's great at tax time, but that is not going to be a strategy with any of them for you to go from the red in your life to the black. And see, here's what I'm trying to help you see. What God is telling us here is radical. It's risky, but it's revolutionary. And here's what I'm trying to say. This stuff ought to look different when we decide we're going to follow Jesus. That giving doesn't become optional. It doesn't become conditional. It's not from what left over. Giving is a part of living. We try to do everything we can here to help you see what the life that you're looking for really looks like. So we've got this thing we call Walking with God, these 3 circles. You know, all 3 circles all the time. You're just really trying to constantly move yourself to where you're living in all 3 circles all the time. This thing we're talking about in this series, this giving thing, is a part of living on mission. A part we've identified as one of the 6 ways that we all live on mission. And it's not optional, it's not conditional, it's not from what left over. Living on mission means that giving is a first priority in my life. Listen, I realize it. The trouble is it's easier said than done. Several years ago, my friend and mentor, Craig McConnell, he said to me, he said, "Hey, dude, have you seen the movie Moneyball?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen it." He said, "Man, you got to get this movie. I thought of you." So I got it, and I watched it. It became one of my top 5 movies of all time. I love this movie. It reminds me of us and this DCC story. But it's about baseball. If you haven't seen it, it's about Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland Athletics, and he hires this kid straight out of Yale, smart, brilliant kid, who comes up with this different formula and strategy for putting together a baseball team. And it really, really works. And ultimately, Billy Beane and this kid together, they kind of revolutionized baseball. They changed the game of baseball forever. And so as I'm writing and studying this week and getting ready for this, Moneyball just kept coming back into my mind. Moneyball, Moneyball, Moneyball. And I'm like, is that because money's in the title? Or why am I thinking about this movie? And I was reminded of this scene where this kid who's so smart and so brilliant, he's put this system in place and it's working, where he himself starts to question his own strategy. And I just couldn't get that scene out of my mind. And so rather than me keep talking about it, let's watch it. Maybe there's some help for all of us in this. Watch this.
Pena is an all-star, okay? And if you dump him and this Hatterberg thing doesn't work out the way that we want it to, you know this is the kind of decision that gets you fired. It is.
Yes, you're right. I may lose my job. In which case, I'm a 44-year-old guy with a high school diploma and a daughter I'd like to be able to send to college. You're 25 years old with a degree from Yale and a pretty impressive apprenticeship. I don't think we're asking the right question. I think the question we should be asking is, do you believe in this thing or not?
So what's that got to do with you and me? I don't think we're asking the right questions. See, the question is not, can I afford to do this? The question is not, how's this going to fit the budget? The question is not, will my financial planner advise this or recommend it? The question is not, where's this going to leave me? The question is not, can I trust them with the money? The question is not, will this help me quickly get out of debt? That's not the question. There's only one question, and the question is this: do we believe in this stuff or not? Do we really believe in this stuff or not? I mean, why in the world do I do this kind of series every single year? Because I like to? No. I'm just as happy this thing is going to be over at the end of today as you are, okay? Just know that, okay? But why do I do this kind of series every single year? I'm going to tell you why I do it. Because I believe in this mission and vision with all my heart. I want to give the rest of my life to it because I believe that everything that God says and Jesus says in this book is absolutely and completely true. And I believe that the very thing that he's pointing us to, our money, our finances, how we handle and manage that, is the most common and the biggest problem and the very thing that is most standing between us and this better life that every single one of us came in here searching for today. Do we believe in this stuff or not? See, historically, we, DCC, here's just the truth, we've been terrible at giving. For 10 years that I've been here now, even before that, we weren't great, but for the last 10 years, we're just not a good giving church. And here's what I need you to know. There are experts out there, lots and lots of experts who have lots and lots of ideas. They want to come alongside of us and help us with that. I'll just tell you the truth. I've received 2 emails. I don't even know how they know what I'm talking about, but 2 emails in the last 3 or 4 weeks saying, hey, I know that giving's tight and all that. Let us come in. We can help you with that. Good people, and they're great at what they do. I'm not being critical of them. We've talked to a few of them over the last 4 or 5 years. Can I tell you what they've told us? They told us those wooden boxes on the wall got to go, and we need to pass a plate. They've told us that we need to have a 3 to 5 minute awkward giving, high pressure giving moment in the middle of the service. And they've told me that this 2 to 3 week thing that I do every year talking about our money and finances and generosity and radical generosity, oh, no. You got to talk about that for 6 straight weeks every single year. And then all of our small groups, you know what else? Oh, this is a good one. You know what else they tell our small groups? They need to be doing this same curriculum every year, right? You got a giving curriculum that every small group does every single year. Yeah, you know what else they've told me? They told me I need to come into your house. I need to come to your house, into the living room, you know, and you blow the dust off the Bible before I get there. And, you know, the room that nobody sits in. And I need to look you in the eye, and I need to say to you, would you please give more to this church? That's what I need to do. You know what else they've told me? They need to tell me that if I'm a responsible leader in a church our size, I've got a responsibility to know what every one of you gives. And they say whenever we do a series like this, I've got to put a commitment card in your hand before you get out of here today, because we're closing out the series, and I need you to write a big number, and this is what I'm going to give monthly for the next 2 years. I need you to sign that and hand it to us before you walk out the door today. Now, here's the thing. There's lots of churches doing all that stuff, and guess what? They're in a lot better position than we are. Deep breath. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do any of that. But here is what we are going to do. We are never, ever, 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 ever going to stop talking about this stuff. Why? Because Jesus said we can't serve God and serve money. And most of us are serving on the wrong side of the equation. Because Jesus said that wherever our money is, that's where our hearts are going to be. And most of our hearts are not in the right place. They're not where we want them to be or where they should be. And Jesus said, He says, hey, seek my kingdom first in everything, even with your money, and watch what I do in your life. And for most of us, that's not happening. We're not in the right place with that. And He said this, you're more blessed when you give than when you receive. And most of us aren't on the receiving. You know, we're on the wrong side of that too. See, ultimately, Jesus is pointing us to everything we're talking about in this series. Jesus is all coming together, and Jesus is pointing us to the real test, the ultimate test. Are you ready for it? Here it is. It's pretty simple. Am I willing to put God to the test? Am I willing to put God to the test? Are we? And are you? In the end, it's not too far off my pajama jeans that I talked about in the first week of this series, right? Remember when I talked about that? And if you weren't here, a lot of you came up to me in the lobby, can I touch it? And yeah, you pulled on them. And if you want to do that today, I'll be out there right after. You can do that, nothing else, but you can do that right there, right? And I told you, these things are amazing, right? My kids put me onto them. Here's the thing, though. You're not going to believe that. You're not going to really know and experience until what? Until you try it on for yourself. See, here's the deal. That's true with American Eagle blue jeans, and that's true with our money, too. See, here's the deal. When I challenged you 2 weeks ago and I said, hey, pick a number, pick a percentage, and then go for it. Boom, I'm going to do this for the next six months. And if it doesn't work or if you're not happy, God doesn't show up, boom, here's the deal. We'll refund your money back to you. You know why I did that? See, I would never, ever, ever do that if this test, this challenge, this dare from God was not in this book. Because at the end of the day, this is not Greg's challenge. It's not DCC's challenge. This is God's challenge. I'm just the messenger. And so if I really believe in this stuff, and I do with all my heart, because I've seen it in my own life, I've seen it in John and Kathy's life, I've seen it in the lives of hundreds of other people too. If I believe in this stuff, then I don't have a choice. If I care about you, I don't have a choice. If I love you at all, I don't have a choice. I have to challenge you. So I'm challenging you. Put God to the test. Just put Him to the test. One of my biggest dreams for us in the next month, and I know that's not a lot of time, is that we're going to have 300 people, families, couples, whatever, consistently giving here every single week at DCC. We've averaged over 200 for the last 3 weeks, and that's amazing. But if history is an indicator for us, here's what's going to happen. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, that's going to taper off. It always has. Even last week, we dropped down to 180-something, below 200. The average is still above 200, but we dropped below, and that's just how, that's the way we've always rolled. And so I just want you to know I'm praying for something different. I'm praying for 2018 to be a revolutionary financial year, not only for us as a kingdom outpost here at DCC, but for each of us individually too. And there is a simple way right in front of all of us for us to begin to take optional and conditional and leftover out of play. I've already challenged you. Hey, pick the amount, pick the percentage. And now that's step one. Here's step two, and there's only 2 steps. That's the good part about it. Take that amount, whatever it is, and set it as an electronic recurring gift Set it as an electronic recurring gift, monthly or weekly, whatever works best for you, and then leave it alone for the next 6 months and watch what God does with that. It is a simple way that is in front of every single one of us. A very practical, simple way for us to what? Put God first financially. Have this giving thing be primary in our lives. And to put God to the test. Come on, he says, I dare you. He says, try me in this. Test me in this. I dare you. I double dog dare you. I double sheep dare you. I double goat, camel, whatever it was in that day. I dare you to put me first financially. And just watch and see what I do with that. Somehow, some way, here's the deal. We got to flip this thing. Because right now, the way most of us operate our lives is we spend and we save if there's any left, and then we give. And what God's pointing us to is we got to give and then save and then spend. And it's not an easy path and it's not an easy choice, but every single one of us can walk out here today and start to move ourselves in that direction. And when you do that, you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to say, guess what? Oh my goodness, I'm seeking God's kingdom first in the very area of my life where it is the absolute hardest for me to do that. And as you begin to do that, guess what happens? All these other things, Jesus promises it. They just start adding up and falling into place for you. I don't know how it works. I know the promise is true because I've seen it in my life and the life of so many people. And you know what you're going to find? You're going to have more peace in your life. You're going to have more margin in your life. You're going to be living in a better story. And you are going to be living a much richer life because you're going to lie in your bed at night and you're going to know what? I have surrendered the very thing in my life that is the hardest thing for any and all of us to surrender. So what if we gave first, we saved next, and we just spent or lived on what was left? This is not about what God wants from you. I promise you, this is about what God wants for you. The ultimate test, the real test is, am I really willing to put God to the test? Let me pray for us. Jesus, there's a reason why you pointed to this widow here. And it wasn't for the benefit, the sole benefit of your disciples, the guys that were sitting with you. That you knew this story was going to be told for generations to come. And you knew that every one of us sitting in this room today, that we needed to hear this. And we needed to be pointed to the fact that this really is not about any amount of money. It is about priority. And this thing that your son, and we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where he says, seek first my kingdom. The seeking you and your kingdom first is something that honestly most of us try our best to apply to our lives, except for this one piece of the pie, this one part of our life, Jesus. And really we're just afraid to do that. Because as we talked about, the math does not work. Right? Financially, it doesn't make any sense. Everything about it suggests that things are going to get worse and not better if we do that. It requires us to trust Jesus. So I pray that you will come, that you'll give us the opportunity and the eyes to see what it is that we need to do. Some small changes that we can to begin to make, to move in your direction. You'll give us the courage to take some steps in that direction. And ultimately, Jesus, that you'll set us free. You came to give us life to the fullest and to set us free. You came to set us free financially too. Would you help us to attack the very things in our lives that are keeping us from that part of life that you came to bring us? That's our prayer, Jesus. In your name, amen. Hey, thanks for being here with us this Sunday morning. Real quick, the series is over. Okay, we're starting a new series next week. It's coming up here. It's called Love Recovers. We're going to talk about the love of Jesus and all that Jesus came to do for us. It's going to be great. I mean, so much healing, so much restoration, redemption over the next 5 or 6 weeks heading into Easter. So we're going to start with Jesus. I'm really excited about this. We're going to start with Jesus at the Last Supper in the garden, and we're going to walk all the way through. We're going to walk with Jesus all the way through the resurrection on Easter, where he sets us all free. And it's going to be amazing. So I hope you start inviting your friends to that. If you want to know more about this place and getting connected, go out the doors, look left. There's a room called the Garage. Nice people in there to answer your questions about next steps and all of that. If you want prayer, there will be people under the screens to my right and my left. Right after I say see you next week, boom, they're going to be here to listen to you and talk with you and pray with you. If you want to give, the boxes are on the wall. You can hit our app or a website if you choose to do that electronically. Or if you want to talk about recurring giving, the garage or the info booth, they can help you with that too. Listen, I'll be out by the fireplace if you want to talk to me. So have a great week. Hope you come back with a few friends as I kick off our new series, Love Recovers, next week. Have a great week.
Standing in a crowded room and I can't see your face. Put your arms around me, tell me everything's okay. In my mind I'm running around a cold and empty space. Just put your arms around me, tell me everything's okay. Break my bones, but you won't see don't make me wait.